Hello and welcome to a Windows XP install on VirtualBox. So, you're going to start by clicking New and then typing in the name that you'd like to call your virtual machine. I'm going to type in Windows XP because we are installing Windows XP today. Next, you're going to choose where you'd like the files to install for your virtual machine. I'm going to go into a separate hard drive and make a file there for them. Next, you're going to make sure that all of the information is correct. Make sure that it verifies that it is Windows as your host and that you're installing Windows XP. Next, you're going to set the RAM size. I'm going to set mine to 2 gigabytes of RAM. That should be plenty for Windows XP. Now you're going to create a virtual hard disk in that location specified beforehand. Most of the settings here are fine. The only thing that we are going to change is the fixed size for the disk. This way we can set how much of that disk space should be allocated for our Windows XP install. Here we have 10 gigabytes, that should be plenty. Now it's going to go through and allocate that space, and I'm going to skip ahead so that you don't have to watch that. So once your space is allocated, you're going to go to your virtual machine and then click on Settings. In the Settings tab, you're going to make sure that all of your system settings are set up correctly. Make sure that you have your memory correctly. Make sure that you have however many processors you'd like to allocate to that virtual machine, and then make sure that you have your display video memory set up to an adequate amount. Here we're going to enable 3D acceleration and 2D video acceleration, as well as set the output to VBox VGA. Next, you're going to install the Windows XP installation disk by clicking on the disk icon and selecting your disk ISO image. If you do not have an ISO of Windows XP installation, I will link one in the description below that you can download. So here you might see that it has invalid settings detected, and I'm going to go to the hardware acceleration to disable that. That might be different between different computers depending on if you had virtualization enabled. Now with that all done, you're going to click Start, and it will launch your virtual machine and begin installing Windows XP. This might take a little bit of time for the virtual machine to initially start up, and now it's going through the Windows setup. This should take about 30-35 minutes from this point forward to getting to the desktop of Windows XP. So now I'll put it into full screen. You can do this at any time by clicking Right Alt and F. This will put it in and out of full screen mode. You'll select the unpartitioned space at 10 gigabytes, format the partition, and it'll begin formatting for you. Now I'm going to skip ahead because this can take some time. So now that it is copying all the needed files to your system, this should take just a little bit longer. So your system will restart. Don't press any key here because it is going to boot from the hard disk. And it is launching the Windows XP installation. Now I have this installation zoomed in on the screen for you so it is easier to see. However, in your experience and on your monitor, it might be very small in the center of the screen. You should still be able to read it, and it should be an issue. So once you're done with the setup, it takes quite a while. You're going to put in your name for the system. And you can kind of leave this stuff pretty much the same unless you need to label the computer and set an administrative password. Now I'm going to set the time zone. And it'll begin installing most of your devices and network connections. This should take about 25 minutes. Once that is done, it will start the intro to Windows XP after it resets your machine. Here it is, Windows XP is prompting you for the screen resolution. You can just click OK on those. Here is Windows XP. Now, here you'll just click Next. You'll turn on automatic updates. And you will skip connecting to the internet unless you absolutely need it. You do not need to register with Microsoft Online. You'll put in your name of the account you'd like to use. I'm going to put in user. And from here on, you're pretty much finished. It'll take you to the home screen. However, just because Windows XP is installed does not mean that you are done. After this screen, we will go and install the Guest Additions CD. I will come out of full screen here in order to install the Guest Additions CD. So to install, you're going to go to Devices and then Insert Guest Edition CD Image. It will automatically start the installation on your Windows XP machine. You just click Next and go through with the installation. Once the installation is complete, you can reboot the virtual machine. Now what these guest editions do is add certain updates to the Windows XP software so that you can enable full screen, you can connect to the internet using your host machine, and different things like that. So, before we were zoomed in at a very low resolution. Now, once we boot into Windows XP with the Guest Edition CD image installed, it should be able to display at a full 1080p resolution in Windows XP. And there you are. We are done with installing Windows XP in VirtualBox.